On a scale of 1 to 10, how desperate are the Raiders for a quarterback in the 2024 NFL Draft? And I chose all of these words purposefully because I asked you this question last show. And you're like, well, I don't like the word desperate. So I'm like, okay, well, let's use the word desperate and see how we are. And I also specifically in this draft, not desperate for a franchise quarterback, not desperate for a big name quarterback, for a quarterback in the 2024 NFL Draft. Because as a general rule, if you don't have a franchise quarterback, you are desperate for a franchise quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's basic. Well, you know what I mean? There's very, very few teams that qualify that don't have a franchise quarterback and aren't desperate for a while. Like maybe you could be like, yeah, Kirk Cousins, I guess, could get you the year or two, but you still definitely want one, a quarterback of the future, all this kind of thing. So as a general rule, if you don't have a franchise quarterback, and some members of Raider Nation think Favre is franchise quarterback. We don't think he is.
They may end up being right. He just hasn't shown us. He hasn't shown me enough.
Some people are so optimistic on Aidan O'Connell. They're like, no, he is our franchise quarterback. We're set. That's not this podcast, but if you do, we're willing to hear you out and tell you you're wrong. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Soto, using the word desperate, how desperate are the Raiders to get a quarterback out of this draft coming up in 29 days?
If we're using the word desperate, I would say like a 2 or a 3 because I don't know that we're desperate. I think that they want to take a quarterback and they will take a quarterback sometime in this draft for a lot of the reasons that you said. It's one of the perfect scenarios to take a quarterback at any time. You have a quarterback that you're comfortable with, which is Favre. You have a quarterback that you like that you brought in to compete, which is Uncle Rico. So you got those two guys. Now, if you can bring a guy in and he is not going to be thrust into the starting spot because you're comfortable with the guys you already have. So it's not imperative that we take one with our first round pick.
I thought Rory put it perfectly on our text chain. He's like, we're horny for a franchise quarterback. Like, I think that's the most accurate way to put it. It's, yeah, like we have quarterbacks in play. We're not as desperate as probably almost a dozen teams that just like have really nothing. We have one guy that's played, a veteran that's gotten a team to the playoffs, and we've got a second-year player that could make we're anticipating some bigger improvements, even though we think his ceiling isn't very high. I think we're just horny for one. You know what I mean? It's like the captain of the cheerleading team just broke up with her boyfriend 2 weeks before the prom. We're like, okay, like we could shoot our shot. We're fine going with the girl next door to the prom. Like we can still go to the prom with the girl next door. Like we'll still go there and have a good time and probably get a raw hand job in the limo on the way back. But if we can get the captain of the cheerleading team, like it's within shot. So I'm a little higher up on the desperate. I'm more like 4 because I want it bad.
Don't get me wrong. I want one. I just don't know that the way the team is looking at it from that perspective. I don't know that because I really do think that AP and the coaching staff is very comfortable with Favre moving forward for the short term.
I think Telesco, especially picking up Minshew, was like, we don't have to go into this draft with getting somebody who we think is to be a franchise quarterback right away.
Yeah, we don't have to get.
They're prepared. Yeah, they're prepared in the event that you don't get what every team wants, a franchise quarterback. So I think we're a little 4 or 5-ish on the desperation scale because we're really horny for that one. And I think also because we're in the Raider bubble looking out, I think sometimes we lose perspective on being on the outside looking into the Raider bubble. Dan Patrick, I was listening to a show this morning. He actually made a pretty good point. He's like, of all the teams and all the positions about what's going to happen at quarterback, he's most intrigued about the Raiders because like 1, 2, and 3 is going to be quarterback. Someone, probably the Vikings, are going to trade for 4. Then what's going to happen with Penix and Nix, and then maybe rounds 3 or 4 or something when the rest of the quarterbacks come in. The Raiders, it's like you hear reports that come out and say Raiders plan on trading down. Raiders plan on trading up. Jalen wants to be a Raider. They're just going to stay put. They got Gardner Minshew. I think the Raiders, I think there's probably 20 other NFL teams a dozen or so NFL teams looking at quarterbacks that are wondering, like, shit, what are the Raiders going to do? Like, if we try to trade up to 14, is our guy going to be there because the Raiders pick him? If we trade to 10, is that going to be good enough? Are they going to trade to 9 to get their guy? Are they going to shoot a Hail Mary and give the Pats a shot at getting Jayden Daniels? Like, I think the rest of the league is with Dan Patrick, wondering what's going to happen with the Raiders. We don't think that way because we're the Raiders. We don't care what that's going on. But I think 31 other teams are like, all right, here's all our contingencies based on this wild card from Las Vegas in Telesco's first year in the silver and black.
And that feeling is all about Telesco. They have a player. We have a player now, a guy who has the relationships, who's been known to make these deals happen. We have a guy that knows how to get this stuff done. And I think because we haven't for so long, we've had, first-time GMs or coaches who were GMs or stuff. We had just recycling all that stuff. We didn't have the guy that had those relationships with the other GMs in the league. We didn't have that guy. So now that we can say, okay, we have a veteran guy who knows what he's doing, who has relationships, who's been known to make this stuff happen, we're so wide open because, we're in the position where do we want an upgrade at quarterback? Of course we do. Are we desperate for one? No, because I think we're comfortable. If it doesn't pan out that way, we're comfortable with who we have right now and maybe drafting a guy later, picking a guy next year or whatever. But we're not going to make a stupid move, and I think other teams know that, so they can't take advantage because – the John Grudens and all those freaking dudes, we can fleece this guy. We don't have to worry about him and Mayock, or we can lie to him and screw him up and say, we'll trade for your number 4 pick. It's like, no, we won't. Now you're screwed, right? What are you going to do? So they're not going to be able to pull one over on us now because Telesco's been around.
It's and even when you and I, because when the news broke that Gardner Minshew got signed by the Raiders, you and I had exact opposite takes initially. We kind of, as time went on, talked about it. We started kind of seeing each other eye to eye. But you're like, it looks like we're not drafting anybody. And I thought that's exactly opposite. I think Minshew's the type of veteran you bring in when you're drafting someone and letting them develop, have a veteran in the room, all that kind of stuff. So if even you and I could have who basically can read each other's minds at this point. We basically think the same. Like we know what each other is going to think about something. We both read the same stuff, talk about it constantly. We're generally on the same page. If you and I had exact opposite takes on the signing of Gardner Minshew, imagine what the other 31 teams are thinking. Like all the different ways, which is great, which is actually awesome. Like it's nice that the other teams are on pins and needles waiting for what we're gonna do instead of like, all right, which shitty guard are they gonna spend their 6th overall pick on? You know what I mean?
Like, definitely not that anymore.
Past regimes, Hey, you made it to the end of our video. Great job. I know you want more. Go ahead and click the next video. And if you're feeling crazy, go ahead and subscribe.